Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Becoming Women podcast with me, your host, Ella Sims, where each week I speak with inspiring women about their teenage years. If this is your first time listening, a very warm welcome to you, and if you're a regular listener, then thank you. My mission with this podcast is to support teenage girls as they navigate the ups and downs of growing up. In each episode, I talk with grown women about their individual journeys as a teenager, the highs and lows, any challenges they may have faced, and what advice they would share with their younger self to help reassure you that you are not alone and those tricky teenage years will pass. On this week's episode, I'm with Kat Nicholls. Kat is a writer and coach and has been blogging since 2008. But in 2017, she decided to start a new blog from scratch, focusing on her passions, self-care, mental health and self-worth, and called it Blue Jay of Happiness. Kat works on this alongside a day job where she writes magazine articles and website copy on similar topics. She's struggled with self-acceptance and self-worth in the past and has done a lot of work over the years to learn how to value herself and find her voice. In 2018, Kat decided she wanted to support others who may have similar struggles through coaching. So she trained to become a coach and launched her services at the end of last year. Kat now balances her day job 4 days a week with blogging and coaching and loves every minute. To see you today.
Oh, hi, very nice to have you.
Thank you for meeting with me, and I would like to get to know, I think, a little bit about what you do. I know that you're a writer, you do a lot of blogging, and to just get you to talk about that a bit, because I think you used to do that when you were younger or for quite a few years.
Yeah, definitely. It was the first thing when I was asked, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Okay.
Was an author. I said, I want to be a writer. And that kind of stuck with me throughout childhood. And yeah, I've been blogging for 11 years now, which is kind of crazy. But in 2017, I decided to start from scratch and started my new blog, which is Blue Jay of Happiness. And that's really focusing on the areas that I'm passionate about, like mental health, self-care, self-belief and all of that. And I also have a day job, Monday to Thursday, where I work for a company, again, writing about kind of mental health and well-being for different websites, and Happy Full magazine as well.
How did you find your childhood? Give me a sense of a bit of your background and family life.
It was a very happy childhood, I would say. My parents always really encouraged me to try new things and start new hobbies.
Okay, cool.
I did things like horse riding and playing the flute. And my dad worked for British Airways, so we travelled a lot as well. So we got to go to lots of different countries. Yeah, I would say I was a bit of a nervous child. I was always quite anxious. I remember having a lot of headaches when I was younger and wanting to go home sick from school and things like that. And that did kind of carry on through into my teenage years. But overall, I would say a very happy childhood.
With the headaches and impacting school, how did you manage something like that?
Well, I think it took me a while to realise what it was. I think at the time I was just called a headachy person. I remember from the doctors, that was their terminology. And even then I had things like chest pain, which I now recognise that to be anxiety. But at the time I had no idea, and no one was really talking about that kind of thing at the time.
No, they weren't.
So it was just, I was considered a kid who just was quite shy.
Yeah.
And didn't like talking to people and things like that.
And you do a lot of coaching about self-care and self-worth. How does that relate to the anxiety that you used to feel?
Oh, that's a huge part of how I now manage anxiety and my mental health in general. Is self-care is just such a key part of it. And I think if we can learn those behaviours before we get to crisis point, before we're at a point where we need to go to the doctors about our mental health, we can help our mental health be better. And we can also manage it if we have any long-term conditions.
And I know you've written in the past a little bit about having a toolkit or a first aid kit. What does that involve?
For me, it's having a list of all the different things that I know self-care wise that really help me. So things like reading a book, having a nice long bath, doing yoga, meditating, who I need to speak to at that time. I think having a list of numbers to call is quite helpful.
Yeah, that's good.
Especially if you do struggle with your mental health, having numbers like the Samaritans or something like that to hand is really helpful. And just knowing and just having that list, for me it's literally just a written down list of things, but some people like to make their own actual first aid kits and like put in a book maybe, or a picture they love, or a film or something like that. But yeah, just having some things to mind, because when you're in that space, when you're not really looking after yourself and maybe your mental health is taking a dip, you're not necessarily recognizing what it is you need. So having maybe a list or something like that, I think, is helpful at that time.
Yeah, and when did you start doing something like that?
I think it was probably when I was first struggling with anxiety as an adult, which was probably 2017 maybe, is when I started getting it, and I had to go to the doctors, and I had cognitive behavioural therapy. And that's kind of where I learned a lot of the tools and really built on some of the other tools I'd learned when I was younger and just turned it into my own thing.
What do you think, if you'd had a first aid kit when you were a teenager, what sort of thing do you think you would have put in it?
Oh my God, that would have been fantastic. That should be a thing. It would probably have been magazines. I loved magazines when I was younger. Maybe reading that and telling people how I feel, because that was something I didn't do as a teenager, as I didn't talk to people about how I was feeling. That's something I've definitely learned more as I've gotten older to do. So it probably would have been things like that.
And what sort of things did you struggle with and wish you'd spoken about a bit?
Well, the kind of shyness I talked about when I was younger, and the headaches and feeling anxious as a kid, that kind of developed into feeling quite isolated at school. Struggled a little bit with bullying. That all of that came together with my personality type to form an eating disorder. So I had anorexia and struggled with depression, self-harm, a lot of things that went around that.
And was there anything in particular, so I guess you mentioned bullying, what kind of bullying was it, and how did that make you feel? It
was never anything too extreme. It was never like physical bullying. It was just people saying mean things to me, being mean about the way I looked, about the fact that I didn't even like school. This is the thing. It was just people's perceptions. Being the geek, the kind of outcast, someone who's a bit different. And in my eyes, being part of the popular crew at school was the goal, and to be cool and to be like them. And I definitely was not that. So I felt very different. And even though I was surrounded by, I did have a group of friends. I just felt like I didn't fit in with any of them particularly well. So I think it was that sense of isolation that just turned everything in on myself.
With the eating disorder, can you tell me a little bit more about that? At what point did you start making a change, or did you eventually speak to someone?
Yeah, well, the way it kind of got resolved in the end was my parents noticing signs that I was struggling and taking me to a doctor and saying, we just want you to feel happier. And that was really important to me, because I was really unhappy. So them taking me to the doctor made me, they took me into counselling, and then eventually I told the counselling what was going on with my eating. And that's how it all kind of came about, and I started going into therapy for that. And I remember at the time feeling very out of control, like everything was happening around me, and I didn't have control of where it was going. But eventually I realised, I want to be free of this. It's taking up so much of my life and energy, and a big part of it was getting out of school, to be honest. Once I was 16 and I moved to sixth form college, and it was a different college away from my school, different people. I realised it didn't matter if I was popular or not, that wasn't important anymore. There was a life outside of school, and that really, really helped me.
Yeah, that's good. And what did your parents pick up on? Do you think was there anything that you did that kind of helped give them an idea and sort of a cry for help at all?
Yeah, I think they noticed my mood. I just wasn't very happy. They did find some evidence of me hiding food that I'd been eating. And my mum actually got to a point where she was so concerned about me, she read my diary. Which...
That's quite common.
Yeah, I think it is. And at the time I was furious, of course. It was my privacy. I was very angry. But looking back, that probably saved me from going deeper into it, and that was her catalyst for taking me to the doctors and calling a helpline and finding out what was going on. So obviously I don't advocate invading people's privacies, but I can completely understand why she did it, and I think it was well-founded.
Have you ever looked over your old diaries if you've kept them?
Yes, I actually made a video for it about it for work.
Okay.
Where I read through some of my old diary entries and talk through it at the time.
Oh wow, okay, cool.
It's very sad to look back on and see the kind of things I was going through at the time and how intense it is. It's easy to almost gloss over it and forget about it, but when you're a teenager going through this, it's incredibly difficult and incredibly intense.
And all consuming, it just
definitely
eats you up a bit. I think it would, with diaries, I have kind of a bit of an interest in it, thinking about the psychology of it all, and even looking at it in particular dates and trying to work out if there was a pattern to the mood that you have, and if there was something else that could have been impacting that.
Yeah, definitely. And looking back, I was very worried about not being cool and not being and being pretty and thin. I definitely put the two together. Being attractive to me was being thin. So that, and you can see that in my diary entries, I start talking about not getting attention from boys at the age when everyone else is having their first kiss, and me desperately searching for a reason for it. Like, why wasn't I part of this popular crowd? Why weren't boys interested in me? And I just decided one day it was because of my body, and pinned it on that, and then everything became centered around that. If I could hit this weight that I thought I needed to hit, everything else would be fine. I would be pretty, boys would like me, I would be popular, and it's taken a lot of unlearning, but I'm at a place now where I have 100% reject the diet culture and have unlearned all of that.
What would you advise someone who's thinking or feeling the same as what you've just described?
It's very difficult because when you're in that mindset, people can say a lot of things to you and you don't necessarily listen. But I think I would say you don't have to feel this way. It feels like you're trapped in a certain way of thinking at the moment, but there is a way out. I think, especially with eating disorders, it's quite common for them to be seen as very long-term, very difficult to recover from. And I always want to kind of send out the message that, yes, that can be true in some cases, but often you can recover fully. You can get to a stage where you eat anything you want. I eat anything I want whenever I want, and I'm fine with it. So I think that would just be my message, is that you don't have to be this way. There is another way of, you can be happier and you can let go of these things. Help is available.
And you touched on earlier as well about self-harm. Did they go in tandem at all, the eating disorder? And
yeah, definitely. I would say the self-harm was more of a symptom of the eating disorder than anything else. I was so unhappy with who I was and so frustrated. It was the only way of expressing that, really. Okay.
I know you've also written in the past about mood tracking, and is that something you still do now?
Yes, I do. I use the Positive Planner.
Okay, cool.
Yes, Positive Planner.
I've heard of that.
It's great, the bright yellow one.
Yeah,
that's the one. I use that at the moment. I've also used Happiness Planner. There's lots available, but I find it so helpful to see where, like, my anxiety peaks, for example. I've noticed it's in line with my hormones when it's coming to that time of the month.
Yes, so important. Just pinpointing that.
It's so interesting to see. It took a while for me to look back, but when you read through everything, it's like, oh yeah, that's happening at a certain time. And also my triggers as well, knowing that if I don't get enough sleep, that makes stress feel 10 times worse. Knowing that I need like one day or one evening a week to really not be doing anything. I just need that downtime. I'm an introvert. My energy really peaks when I have to like go into work and interact with people a lot. So having that downtime is really important to me.
Is that something you advise clients that you work with?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Even if they're not an introvert, even if you're an extrovert, it's about finding kind of slowness, maybe. For some people, quietness, like not listening to anything. I just think it's really important to connect with yourself at some point during either the day or the week. That's what journaling is for me. Mood tracking, writing stuff in. That's me checking in with myself every day. Like, okay, how am I feeling right now? What's going on? And I think we don't do that very often. Yeah. We can wake up and go on our phones and spend the day lost in a to-do list. And so just checking in with yourself is something I definitely recommend people do.
Yeah, I think getting into that habit quite early on would be really beneficial. What other tips would you give someone who is a teen, say 13 to 19, as a self-worth coach?
I think I would say try and recognise that your differences, the things that make you different, are the things that make you special and worthwhile. Because from what I remember as a teen anyway, I wanted to be the same as everyone else. I wanted to be what everyone else was. But if I'd recognised that actually the things that made me different were my strengths, then I could have built on that at the time. So I think trying to recognise that and trying to recognise your sense of worth and build up confidence as well. Something I did that really helped in my recovery, and something I still do now and I recommend people do, is I call it a self-belief evidence bank.
Oh, okay, I've not heard of that. That sounds really cool.
It was when I was a teenager, so this is when I was kind of trying to recover from anorexia. I would write down, whenever anybody gave me a compliment, I'd write it down in a little notebook and then go back and look through it when I was feeling low about myself. And nowadays it's more, I kind of screenshot things. So if I get a really nice direct message from Instagram, someone's emailed me, said something lovely, good feedback on a piece of writing I've done, I will kind of screenshot it, and I've got a photo album called Evidence. Okay. So whenever I'm doubting myself, or whenever I'm not sure I am in the right line of work, or whether or not I should just give everything up, I can just flick through that and see how I have connected with some people, and it reminds me why I'm doing it. And of course I don't think external validation is the way to go. I think you need to find that internal validation. But when you're starting in your journey to try and build up self-worth and self-confidence, I think just our brains don't hold on to the positives.
The negative.
Yes, negativity bias, which is a primitive thing to try and protect us. Being more mindful of the joyful moments and the connections and the positives just helps you in that first stage to really build up confidence.
I feel like that leads really nicely onto social media and the pressures on young girls today. You talked about taking screenshots of when you get a really nice bit of positive feedback from someone on Instagram or social media, or it might be an email. I think it's great to filter through all of that noise and pick up on the positives. What are your thoughts on the current pressures that they have at the moment?
Yeah, it's very different to when I was a teenager. We didn't have any social media, and I think there is a lot of pressure from it. There is a lot of wanting to fit in again, like being like everybody else is, or your school friends on Instagram and social media. But I also think it can be a fantastic tool for finding who you are and finding people that inspire you, following really confident people who are unapologetically themselves. And being inspired by them. I think we can forget that we control who we follow on social media. So if someone's making us feel bad, we can unfollow, we can mute, we can just really curate our social media feeds so that we're following things that inspire us and light us up. So there's definitely pros and cons to it, but I think if we focus on that side of it and try and find the positives in social media and use it as a tool to learn more from different people outside of your little bubble, maybe learn more experiences. The stuff I learned through Twitter now about what's going on in the world, I didn't have that when I was younger. And I think if I did, I might have been a little bit less concerned with boys and popularity and things like that, because I would have seen I would have had a wider view of the world. I think
the exposure is far greater. I definitely feel that that I think that terming definitely the older end of teenagers as emerging adults, that they are really concerned about equality and the climate and what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years when they are the same age as you and I. And they've got a lot more responsibility for it all.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's brilliant. I think that's great that people are having those discussions and having those thoughts. Of course, there are cons that come with that as well, like maybe anxiety is probably on the rise as a society, potentially because we're worried about, Brexit, Trump, climate. There's a lot going on right now that I think is causing anxiety, but I do think it's good to be informed of what's going on and have that space to form your own opinion and your own voice.
So do you regularly filter through who you follow and then remove them if you don't like them?
Yeah, definitely. I just try and get a sense of just try to remind myself, if there's someone I'm following and I'm watching and they're bothering me or something about it, I'm like, why am I watching this? Why am I watching this person's stories? Or why am I reading their thoughts when... And it might not even... is almost always never a personal thing about them. It's usually about something they're saying is making me feel a certain way because of my own baggage. So it's never a personal thing. It's usually just that person's making me feel bad about myself and something I'm doing. So I'm just going to unfollow for now. I can check back in later. Maybe at another point I'm feeling in a better headspace. I can follow them again. But right now it's better for me to just hit that unfollow button.
I was going to ask a series of quick fire questions.
Oh, yes.
If you don't mind. What was do you have a defining song from when you were a teenager that you were just obsessed with?
Oh, yes. And interestingly, I was listening to this band the other day with my boyfriend. Linkin Park was the first band, their album Hybrid Theory, and the song Paper Cut was the first time I listened to music outside of pop music.
Yes,
And the first time I realised that music could be amazing and different, and helped me tap into all of my angst as a teenager.
And it's not what was just on top of the pops.
Exactly. Yeah. Made me feel cool and different.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much more exposure to different cultural music now, which I think is amazing. What about Teen Crush?
Oh, Teen Crush. I really liked Johnny Depp back when I was younger. Less so these days.
Yeah. Maybe not now.
Yeah, definitely not now. But back then, definitely, yeah.
And first kiss?
Oh, my first kiss was at a house party. I think I was 15, and I just walked around the corner in the garden and was met with this boy's face, and he just kissed me, and I was very shocked by it, and I walked into my friends.
Sudden.
Yeah, I walked into my friends and I was like, I think I just had my first kiss. And they said like, oh, how was it? And I was like, not great. Is that really what it's like? And they're like, oh no, it gets better. Don't worry. And thankfully it did.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can say that they've had an amazing first kiss.
No,
Not
I don't
really.
think so.
No. That's great. And I have 2 questions that I ask all guests. One of them is, knowing what you know now and the experience that you've been through, what would you advise your younger self?
I think I would advise her to step back and look at things outside of what's going on right now, and recognising that what's happening in this moment isn't going to be forever. I was very convinced that the way I was in school was going to play out for the rest of my life, and I was always going to feel that way.
Yeah.
So I think I would tell her to kind of relax, and that things will change. There is a life outside of school. And then also to slow down. I think I was very concerned with trying to be the finished product of who I thought I should be.
Yeah. And keeping up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now, of course, I recognise that everything's always a process. We're always changing, we're always learning, and we're never finished.
And if you could give a gift to all teenage girls around the world, what would that be?
I think it would be a strong sense of self-worth. I mean, I would say that I'm a self-worth coach. But I honestly think if you have that belief instilled into you that you are worthy as you are in the moment, not having to lose weight, not having to change the way you look, the way you act, what you're interested in, your intellect, none of that. If you recognise that you are worthy as you are, that's a really strong foundation to build things like confidence on and pursuing your dreams and your passions.
Yeah, that's great. Lovely. Thank you so much. It's been really lovely to
speak
with you today.
Thank you.
If you've been affected by any topics in today's episode, please contact Samaritans. You can go to their website www.samaritans.org or call them on 116 123. Thanks for listening to Becoming Women with me, Ella Sims. If you like the show and want to know more, head to becomingwomen.com or follow me on Twitter or Instagram. I'd love it if you could rate and review this podcast or get in touch, as your comments on each episode mean so much to me.